instant that I watched it, I had this tremendous sense, I felt this tremendous sense of responsibility.
Over a decade ago, you found something, a buried treasure amongst your family's belongings. Can you just walk us through that discovery, how you discovered it, when you realized what you were holding in your hands, and maybe a little bit about how your awareness of what you were holding in your hands changed over time?
Sure. Yeah, I was at my parents' place in Florida, and I was rooting around in the closet, as one does, and I came across a box of old home movies that we had preserved, or that they had preserved. They were in terrible condition, and it was, vacation footage, my parents' wedding, things like that. But among these was a film of my grandparents on vacation in 1938, and when you start playing the film, it was in such poor condition it couldn't be played, and we didn't have a projector, but it had been transferred to VHS sometime in the 1980s. So we watched it again on VHS, and there's a title that says Our Trip to Holland, Belgium, Poland, Switzerland, France, and England, 1938. And, I guess maybe we had seen this as kids. I had this recollection that we had this film, but I had never thought about it or looked at it as an adult. And seeing it in 2009, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about the trip. I didn't know anything about my grandparents' travels. But just seeing Poland and 1938 in the same sentence told me that this was something of tremendous importance. And then when you look at the film, there's hundreds of people in it, a lot of children sort of mugging for the camera and trying to get the lens on them. And the instant I watched it, there's nothing bad that happens in the film. It's actually quite charming. But we know something that they don't know. And the instant that I watched it, I had this tremendous sense, I felt this tremendous sense of responsibility that very likely this is the only moving imagery of these people 1 year before the German invasion, 1 year before the war starts. And so it seemed to me that their memory had somehow become my responsibility. So yeah, I felt a profound urgency to try and understand what I was looking at, what the film was showing. I didn't even know what town it was when I first found it, but I wanted immediately to be able to identify these people. I wanted to know who they were, how they came to be, where they were, how they came to be in this footage, and what had happened to them, of course.
So after that initial shock of recognition, what were your next steps to taking the film from sort of a neglected family heirloom, not even an heirloom the way it was, well, it was preserved along with other precious memories. But how did you take it from being something that, was part of your family or belonged to your family to something that became part of the world?
Well, the first and most important thing was I donated it to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. As I mentioned, when I found it, it was in such poor condition it couldn't be projected, but they gave it to a preservation studio, Color Lab, which they work with, and they were able to preserve the footage and to make an archival print that was possible now to examine with great detail. So while that was happening, of course, I asked my family, where is it? And, what information did we have? And my aunt and my father were unanimous in saying that it was my grandmother's hometown. So my sister is a genealogical wizard, and we had found that town, and we knew some survivor from that town. So we showed the film to him, and within a second, he said, I've never seen this place before in my life. So imagine that. The family story turned out to be wrong. But that left me kind of at a dead end. And the next thing I thought was, well, if it's not my grandmother's hometown, maybe it's my grandfather's hometown. And so I started searching. I was unable to find a survivor from that town who was able to say anything about it. I did find a woman, but she was so young when the war began and so traumatized by her survival that she really couldn't focus on the film and couldn't tell me, she couldn't even identify it as the town. But I went to archives and I searched and I tried to learn everything that I could about that town. And ultimately, at the Ghetto Fighters House Museum in Israel, in their photo archive, I found a photograph that very clearly stated the Nasielsk synagogue doors. It shows a picture of the doors of this synagogue. And it happens that there's an image of these doors in the film. So it was from that I was able to determine with certainty that the town in the film is my grandfather's hometown of Nasielsk, about 35 miles north of Warsaw.
Should we take a look at it now that you've set it up? Let's share this 3 minutes in Poland with the people who are here with us today.
I'll comment a little bit, though I think it's best to just watch it. Of course, it's silent, so there's no information that the film provides other than what's in the imagery. And you see the excitement of the kids in town when Americans show up, especially with a movie camera.
Yeah, this happens all over the world. Wherever you go with the camera, kids show up. There seems to be something like a communal event going on. Is there something going on inside?
Sure. Well, this is the image you can see on the upper left. There's a carved lion on the door, and that was the image that was in the photograph that allowed me to identify the town. Yeah, clearly there's a large gathering in what is the synagogue here. And, it's impossible for us to know exactly what it was, but my suspicion was that, well, the Americans had shown up and very likely made some kind of a donation. And so perhaps there was a special service in their honor. The other really remarkable thing about the film here is that almost 2/3 of it are in color.
Being in color really changes the perception. It goes from something far away long ago to something not so far away and not so long ago.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Although the images are just as sharp in some of the black and white, there's a vividness to the color sections. And that bow, the red bow and the girl's hair there, it just, it makes it feel like you're right there.
Do you know anything about the size of the town?
Sure. At the time, Nasielsk had approximately 5,000 residents. There was a sort of farming community surrounding it, so maybe 7,000 in the greater metropolitan area, but it was a very small town. But of that, 3,000 were Jews, so it was at least 50%, or almost 50% of the population was Jewish. That's my grandmother and 3 of their friends. The woman with the hat, the floral hat that just walked down the steps.
Who's this little girl? She's so cute.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea?
I don't. And the mama who's shoving people off the steps.
To further explore Jewish Poland, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to always stay up to date.